After 65, many Christians begin to silently ask themselves, if not marriage, then does God still allow love? Perhaps you miss having someone to walk alongside, to talk with, to pray with, to share life, without romance, without guilt, without explanations. But almost no one talks about this in church. Today, you will discover what the Bible truly reveals about platonic friendship in maturity, and why it might be one of God's most forgotten purposes for overcoming loneliness and restoring joy. After 65, there is a type of silence that many Christians carry inside. It is not a lack of faith. It is not rebellion against God. It is the absence of someone to truly share life with. Perhaps you know this feeling. You pray. You trust in God. But even so, you miss sitting beside someone, talking without hurry, sharing memories, speaking about the Word, laughing at simple things. And then, the silent doubt arises. Is it wrong to desire companionship now? Does God expect me to walk alone until the end of life? Many were taught that every deep bond between two people must end in marriage. If it doesn't, then it's seen as dangerous, suspicious, or of no spiritual value. But this idea never came from the Bible. In Ecclesiastes 4, verse 9, the word says that two are better than one, because if one falls, the other lifts him up. Notice, the text does not speak of romance. It does not speak of physical intimacy. It speaks of presence, of support, of walking together when strength is not what it used to be. In the later years, loneliness is usually not loud. It doesn't arrive screaming. It arrives slowly, when children go their own ways, when invitations decrease, when the phone rings less, when the house becomes too big for one person. And many Christians begin to blame themselves for feeling this. But here is a liberating truth. God never created human beings for loneliness. At no stage in life, platonic friendship is not spiritual weakness. It is maturity. It is sitting beside someone without ulterior motives. It is praying together. It is breaking bread. It is holding a hand in a difficult moment. Jesus himself deeply valued friendship. He wept with friends. He rested with friends. He walked with friends, without this needing to be explained. Perhaps the emptiness you feel is not a lack of something wrong. Perhaps it is the heart recognizing a call from God for a form of love that almost no one taught you to see. But if this is true, why do so many mature Christians still live with this desire in guilt and fear? What if the problem was never love, but the human rules that placed limits where God did not? Let's discover this now. But first, if this video is already bringing you light and understanding, leave your amen in the comments as a sign that you understand that God still speaks, still cares, and still connects people. Throughout life, many Christians have learned that there is only one type of approved love, the kind that leads to marriage. Everything else was treated as a risk, a temptation, or confusion. But was it God who taught this, or religious culture? In Romans 12, verse 2, we are invited to renew our minds and not conform to the patterns of this world. This includes, also, the way we understand love and maturity. After 65, love changes. It slows down. It becomes more conscious, more spiritual, more profound. Not every affection desires possession. Not every connection demands exclusivity. There are bonds that exist solely to sustain the soul. Perhaps you have already experienced a friendship like this. Someone who brought you closer to God, who brought you peace, not confusion, who helped you through a difficult time without creating emotional dependency or guilt. So why do so many people judge? Because the world, and often the church itself, struggles to understand what is pure without labels. But God understands. In Proverbs 17, verse 17, it is written that a friend loves at all times. The Bible does not add conditions. It does not require contracts. It does not impose fear. In the later years, God often gifts us with relationships that are not meant to restart an entire life, but to strengthen what remains of the journey. Relationships that do not demand human promises, but live on care, respect, and healthy boundaries. Perhaps the Lord is showing you that love has not ended. It has merely changed form. But how to live a platonic friendship in a healthy way? How to protect the heart from judgment, from emotional confusion, and from wrong expectations? This is what God begins to reveal in the next step. Because when the Lord creates a bond, He also teaches how to guard it with wisdom. There is a type of pain that does not disappear merely with the passing of years. Some wounds remain there, silent, even after much prayer. Wounds left by losses, disappointments, rejections, and even by marriages that did not end as expected. Many mature Christians believe that, after a certain age, they must learn to endure alone, as if seeking support were a sign of spiritual weakness. But this was never God's plan. In Proverbs 27 verse 17, the word reminds us that, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Notice, God speaks of growth, not of romance. He speaks of mutual care, of someone who helps to realign the heart when it begins to close up. In the later years, wounds tend to be deeper because they carry history. History of love, history of losses, history of silences that lasted too long. Perhaps you have lost someone you loved very much. Or perhaps you lived so many years in a difficult relationship that today the heart is afraid to open again, even for a friendship. And it is here that the grace of God reveals itself in a delicate way. Sometimes He does not heal all at once. He heals little by little, through presence. A healthy platonic friendship does not invade, does not demand, does not accelerate. It respects the heart's timing. It is someone who listens without judging, who prays with you, not out of obligation, but out of care, who reminds you of who you are in God when emotional memory tries to convince you otherwise. If you have ever felt that loneliness has left you harder, more closed off, more distrustful, know something important. God has not called you to live isolated in order to be strong. He has called you to walk accompanied in order to be healed. If this word is bringing relief to your heart, share this video with someone who also carries this type of wound. Take the opportunity to leave your like and subscribe to our channel. Sometimes, God uses you as a bridge of comfort. But how to discern when a friendship comes from God and not just from emotional need? Because not every bond heals, but the one that comes from the Lord brings peace, not confusion. One of the biggest questions in maturity is this: how to know if this friendship is from God or just a fruit of loneliness? This doubt is legitimate, especially for those who have already suffered, especially for those who have been emotionally confused in the past. The Bible offers us a simple and powerful principle. In James 3 verse 17, it is written that the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable. Note this: what comes from God brings peace, not anxiety, not guilt, not confusion. Platonic friendships born from God's will do not tighten the heart. They do not create dependency. They do not demand emotional exclusivity. They enlarge life. They do not restrict it. In the later years, this is even more important, because the heart already knows its own frailties. It already knows where it hurts. It already knows where it can get confused. A healthy friendship respects boundaries. It understands days of silence. It does not demand constant presence. It rejoices when you grow, even if that means less time together. Perhaps you have felt the opposite. A relationship that seemed good, but brought restlessness, that generated guilt, that distanced you from peace with God. These are important signs. God does not work through emotional pressure. He leads with gentleness. Jesus said, in Matthew 11 verse 30, that His yoke is easy and His burden is light. This also applies to the connections He allows in our lives. If this friendship draws you closer to God, brings you inner rest, and helps you live with more gratitude, there is a great chance it is a gift from the Lord. But there is still a challenge. How to deal with external judgment, with the looks and comments that try to distort something God built with purity? Because sometimes the greatest test is not in the bond, but in the courage to protect it. One of the greatest challenges of platonic friendships in maturity is not inside the heart, it is outside. It's the looks, the subtle comments, the uncomfortable questions. Are you two together? Won't this cause problems? Wouldn't it be better to just get married? Many Christians over 65 end up distancing themselves from healthy relationships not because they are harmful, but because the judgment is exhausting. It's exhausting to explain. It's exhausting to defend oneself. It's exhausting to feel the need to prove purity all the time. But God's word reminds us, in Galatians 1 verse 10, that we are not called to please people, but God. This does not mean living without responsibility. It means living with a conscience before the Lord. When a friendship is built with respect, clear boundaries, and the fear of God, it does not need everyone's approval to be legitimate. It only needs to remain clean before the heart and the conscience. In the later years, many people have lived long enough to know that not every opinion deserves space in the soul. Even so, judgment can wound, especially when it comes from other Christians. Perhaps you have already felt this. Perhaps you have distanced yourself from someone out of fear of what they would think. Perhaps you have closed yourself off again to avoid being misunderstood, but God does not waste connections He Himself allowed. He uses these friendships to strengthen, not to shame. Jesus was also judged for sitting at the table with people no one understood. Even so, He remained faithful to love and truth. If you live a friendship that draws you closer to God, brings you peace, and does not violate your values, protect it with wisdom, not with confrontation, but with maturity. Sometimes, protecting means maintaining discretion. Other times, it means silent firmness. And in all of them, it means trusting that God sees the heart, even when people do not. But after all, what is the greater purpose of these connections that God allows in maturity? After so many years lived, many Christians begin to ask, what is my purpose still? Does God still have something for me? The biblical answer is clear, yes. And often, this purpose involves the people God places at our side. In John 15 verse 15, Jesus said, "No longer do I call you servants, but friends." This reveals something profound. God values friendship as a space for revelation, care, and spiritual growth. In maturity, friendship ceases to be just companionship. It becomes mission. A healthy platonic friendship can be a place where faith is strengthened, where hope is renewed, where loneliness loses its power. Perhaps God is using you to be a presence in someone's life. Perhaps someone is an answered prayer for you. In the later years, it is no longer about building a distant future. It is about living the present with meaning, sitting at the table, praying together, sharing stories, walking slowly. This also glorifies God. The world tries to convince us that without romance or marriage, life loses color. But God shows that life gains depth when it is shared with purpose. These mature friendships remind us that love has not ended, it has been refined. It is not less intense. It is more pure. If this message has spoken to your heart up to this point, comment something simple, perhaps a word of gratitude to God. This gesture can strengthen another person who reads in silence. And never forget, even in the final season of life, God continues to write chapters full of meaning, but something important is still missing. How to close this path with hope, without fear of tomorrow. That is what we will keep together in the final words. Perhaps, for a long time, you believed that God's love for your life was limited to a single form. But today, the Lord reminds you of something precious. He was never limited. True, mature, platonic friendship is also a divine gift. It combats loneliness, strengthens faith, brings rest to the weary heart. If you feel God spoke to you today, keep this word in your heart. And, if you wish, share this video with someone who also needs to feel understood and loved in this phase of life. Write in the comments what the Lord awakened in you. Sometimes, testifying is also a form of healing. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Ageless Souls, to continue walking with us. And always remember, even after 65, God has not closed your story. He is still writing new chapters, full of purpose, presence, and true love. I'll see you in the next video.